Today, over 1 billion men and women identify themselves as Buddhists. From its beginnings in India 2,500 years ago, the message of the Buddha was initially only transmitted by a few wandering monks. 3 centuries later, in Bactria, it would undergo a profound metamorphosis through its contact with Greek culture. What was the spiritual, artistic, and cultural alchemy that gave birth to such an immensely popular religion? One evening in India, in the 6th century BC, Sakyamuni, literally a sage from the Sakya tribe, was meditating under a tree. He suddenly understood the origin of all things and became the Buddha, which means the enlightened one. A pragmatic philosophy rather than a religion, his message teaches how to liberate oneself from all needs in order to attain an enlightened state. After the death of the Blessed One, his disciples spread his teachings throughout India, from Ceylon to the Himalayas. At the same time, in Greece, Pythagoras was teaching that renunciation and rigor were required to reach knowledge. These monks are still practicing primitive Buddhism and live their daily life according to the precepts established by Sakyamuni. They believe that life in society only causes confusion. They therefore enter into holy orders and lead an austere existence until their death. They only own a single set of clothes and live off charity. Such monks are obeying the words of the Buddha, who stated, "The human condition is made up of suffering, and only years of ascetic practices will lead to a path that enables a state of infinite fulfillment to be attained. This state is known as enlightenment and illumination." They live isolated in the mountains and spend most of their time meditating. Meditation enables them to seek the essence of things. Buddha, the Blessed One, was convinced that man searches for idols. Therefore, he expressly forbade any representation of his person. Thus, primary importance was placed on the spiritual message alone, to oppose man's natural inclination towards idolatry. After the death of the Buddha, his disciples spread his teachings throughout Hindu India and Ceylon, the present-day Sri Lanka. Ajanta, to the northeast of Bombay, is the location of one of the oldest Buddhist sites. This immense monument, half a kilometre in diameter, was dug into the rock in the shape of a half circle. Each new monk dug his own sanctuary. Therefore, the temple was a building site for over 1,000 years. In the oldest cave, the sculptures and frescoes date back to 200 BC. The restoration work is meticulous. Each image is cleaned with a solvent, centimetre by centimetre, and Buddhist symbols gradually reappear. In this, the oldest known fresco, the believers are praying in front of Kalachakra, the wheel of law, an ancient Indian symbol, and not in front of an image of the Buddha.
This is the Kalachakra, and people are, you can see here, people with the folded hands here, with the people with the folded hands here. On this side, people with the folded hands, they are worshipping the Kalachakra, which is the sign of Lord Buddha.
The Indian artisans told the story of the Buddha without ever representing him, other than in the form of a lotus, a horse without a rider, or a tree. This was a way of honoring the instructions of the Buddha Sakyamuni to never represent his image. This would only be respected until the 2nd century BC. In neighbouring caves, many depictions of the Buddha were found sculptured into the rocky wall. They were made 300 years after the Kalachakra frescoes, which was the length of time it took before prohibition was no longer respected. It was nothing less than a revolution. After the death of Sakyamuni, 8 of his disciples collected the ashes of their master and distributed them in 8 different locations throughout India, which became sanctuaries or the stupas. During the next 2 centuries, these wandering monks, living on charity, would spread Buddhism throughout the north of the Indian subcontinent. Another century passed before Buddhism reached the province of Gandhara in Bactria, a region located between the present-day Afghanistan and Pakistan. For almost a century, the descendants of the soldiers Alexander left behind during his conquests had colonized the kingdom. The Buddhists set about founding hundreds of monasteries throughout the kingdom. In addition to the descendants of Alexander's soldiers, the local populations that Buddhist missionaries discovered also included Greek settlers coming from Greece, Egypt, and Antioch. In other words, a world deeply marked by Greek culture. This was the first meeting between Buddhism and Greek thinking, and it would be a fundamental one. A flourishing type of art started in this region. It owed its existence to the artists